Today we are going to be talking about independent and dependent variables. So first let's define what the IV and DV are. So first, a dependent variable. This is a variable that changes in response to another variable. This changes in response to another variable. And the independent variable, this is the variable that causes the dependent variable to change. So the independent variable causes the dependent variable to change. So if you want to go ahead and write these down in your notes just so that you can flip back and give yourself a quick reminder if you needed to. So independent causes something to change. It influences the change. And dependent, it depends on what the independent variable is because that causes it to change. So let's try these out in a few examples. So example 1, an apple orchard sells apples by the pound. Each day, P pounds of apples are sold, and the amount of money taken in, M, is recorded. So P are the pounds of apples sold, and M is the amount of money we earn. So the question we want to figure out is which variable, P or M, either pounds of apples or money, depends on the other. So we kind of have to think about, do the pounds of apples sold depend on the amount of money that you bring in? Or does the amount of money you bring in depend on how much apples were sold? So M depends on P. So M would be our dependent variable. You think about this, you can think about how much money you get, whether you get $10 or $15 or $150, that money all depends on how many apples you actually sell. So you have to sell more apples to make more money. So that's why that would be the dependent variable. And P, how many we actually sell, this is our independent. The amount of apples we sell changes the amount of money we earn. Let's try another one. Example 2. A bike shop rents beach cruiser bikes and mountain bikes. Customers can rent these items by the day or the week. What are the independent and dependent variables involved in the cost of rental? So the first thing we want to do is we want to identify the variables involved. So let's think about this. So we have beach cruiser, mountain bike, and we have the price per day and the price per week. So we have a few different variables here. So number 1, we have the beach cruiser bike. We can use this as B. We have the mountain bike. We also have the price per day. Can use the variable D for this one. And we have the price per week, which I'm going to use W for that. The other 2 variables that we have here, we have the total length of the rental, so how long people are renting the bikes for. So length of rental. We use L for that. And then we also have the total cost. How much do you have to spend to be able to rent these bikes? So whenever you go rent something, you have to think about the different types of bikes. There's 2 different types of bikes that you can rent. There's different prices if you want to rent it for a day or a week. And then also depends on how much time you're going to spend on the bike. And then finally, your total cost of how much you're going to pay for it. So now let's think about which of these could be independent variables and which of these could be dependent variables. So what is dependent and what is independent? So number one, the beach cruiser. Do we think this is a dependent or an independent variable? So the beach cruiser is dependent because it depends on the rate. I'm actually just going to use the variable. It might be better for that. The beach cruiser depends on the rate per day or week. And the mountain bike also depends on the price. So when you're going to say which bike do I want to rent, you're going to think about, well, which one is more expensive or which one's cheaper. So your choice on choosing a bike depends on the price per day or per week. And so that means that price is an independent variable. So the price per day and the price per week are both independent variables because they affect your decision to rent which bike, either the mountain cruiser or the beach cruiser. So we have our beach cruiser we did both of the bikes. We said both of these are dependent variables and our price is what our independent variable is. The last one we have is the length of the rental and the total cost. So we kind of had to ask ourselves, does total cost depend on how long you ride the bike, or does how long you ride the bike depend on the cost? And so total cost here is going to end up being our dependent variable because it depends on how long you ride the bike for. If you ride the bike for an hour versus an hour and a half, that's going to affect how much you have to pay for it. So our independent variables here are price per day, price per week, and then the length of the rental. And what changes are the two bikes, the options of the two bikes that you can choose from, and the total cost, how much you're spending throughout the day. All right, so our last one, I want you guys to try this on your own. So it says a baker used a certain number of cups of batter, B, to make P pancakes. Which variable, P or B, batter, which variable, P pancakes or B batter, is the dependent variable? So think about which depends on what. So do the number of cups of batter depend on the number of pancakes you're making, or do the number of pancakes you're making depend on how much batter you have? So think about which would be our independent and which would be our dependent variable here.